Hey, Lois.
Hey Adam, how you doing today?
4 minutes late. Freezing computer problem here, but nice to see you again. Happy Monday, right? It's like
Yeah, always
everything moves
something,
a lot
always
better.
something.
Um,
What I'm gonna do, Adam, after we just see if you have any questions, is do like an introduction of you and then kind of move into questions. And I know at one point you had talked about doing kind of like a little mini presentation. Is there a good way for me to lead into that?
so I mean, I know that's what we talked about. I don't really have anything
Okay.
necessarily prepared, but because I assumed we were going to probably just do this in like an interview style, right?
Yeah, and
So
that's fine. I do have questions for you.
okay, all right, that works perfectly for me. Yeah. I just wasn't sure exactly how we were going to structure it, but that works on my end if that's good.
Okay. All right, well, then I'll get us started and want to welcome everybody to the Resilient Entrepreneur Quest. I'm Dr. Lois Reed, and I have with me today Adam Barney. Adam is an esteemed energy coach and author of dedicated to empowering leaders to unlock their goals, build energy, and maintain accountability. With 2 decades of experience, Adam has guided hundreds of executives and emerging leaders through personal and professional growth. His unique approach focuses on fostering optimism and autonomy, enabling individuals to realize their full potential. Adam's also the author of Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Path to Empowered Optimism and Autonomy, with a deep exploration of how personal optimism and autonomy can elevate one's life. So, welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Lois. It's great to be here. I'm excited to join the Resilient Entrepreneur Summit. It's an incredible opportunity and such a powerful place to be. So I'm happy to be here today.
Well, the first question I have for you is you focus on energy management and leadership. And how can entrepreneurs who often experience fluctuating energy levels due to some of their health challenges optimize their energy for productivity?
So I mean I think it's a great opportunity to sort of talk about how no matter what we come, whether it's through disabled medical issues, whatever the case is, or even as a fully functional human, we all have that personal energy that we can work off of and build from. And I think you picked up on it on the intro, probably a little bit, but my philosophy is that no matter where you come from, what challenges you face, what background you have, you can use that energy in a way that actually can change your own trajectory and change the world. And I think that that self-belief is a big piece that comes into the play of anyone who does face a challenge, no matter what that challenge looks like. And I think that for, our audience here today in terms of resilient entrepreneurs and, how to unlock business growth while navigating any chronic health conditions, a piece of it is so much of mindset being in place. Knowing that, for instance, the even if it's the darkest, cloudiest day out there, the sun is still shining behind the clouds, at least until, millions of years in the future when something happens from a catastrophic, way across the universe. But obviously, also, it's important to know that that's not something we have control over. And that's another piece of the puzzle in terms of mindset and energy. From my perspective, the energy that we bring out to the world ends up reflecting back on us as well. And if we have that self-belief and know that, even as anyone who faces a challenge, we are still unique and we are someone who can take what we have that's driven us to where we are today and use that knowledge, that insight, and that background, and that can help influence other people in the world. And you can find that audience where that really deeply, deeply resonates and can change it. I think one of the biggest things that we've experienced over the past few decades in the world, and obviously it's being facilitated through the summit, is the magic of technology that can bring us together. And of course, there are nefarious ways that that technology is used in some places, but it was built from a collaborative standpoint. And one of the biggest pieces that technology enables, and I see so much beauty and energy comes from this as well, is that you can bring these communities together when people have the same intention and that energy is so well supported. So I bring that up, for instance, because I've, to sort of move outside of the health conditions realm, I'm deeply woven into organizations that are working towards justice and equity in the world, and also more specifically climate solutions as well. And it's incredible in any community when you have that same intentionality of people marching in the same direction, how you can, number one, find a network and find a community, but you can impact other people and increase the effectiveness and the energy of whatever you might be working on from your perspective that brought you into that community. And the technology that we have in front of us, for instance, you and I would have never met had we not had this technology. The people who are, watching this through the summit would never have had that enabled without the technology. How do you lean a little bit more heavily into that to find those supportive people? I have to say there's a flip side to that coin, how we are each unique with our set of backgrounds and experiences, but ultimately through tools like technology, you can find someone who's halfway around the world who might be dealing with the same thing that you're dealing with from a chronic condition and connect together. It's just incredible what that can lead to. And you know, just to get into a little bit more of background, I've had I lost my mother 10 years ago to ALS. So that led me to take an opportunity of loss and turn it into something where I could positively impact the world. It's led me to become deeply involved with the ALS TDI, the ALS Therapy Development Institute here in the Boston area. It's also led me to get involved with research studies. So I've actually gotten to work with Dr. Michael Benatar, who's at the University of Miami Neurology Department and is the world's preeminent ALS researcher. Those are opportunities that wouldn't have been unlocked had I not taken the challenge of that diagnosis and my mom passing away, that I never would have opened up. And that's just one example. On the flip side of the coin as well, we have very good friends whose young daughter has a uh, debilitating disease called Tay-Sachs. That is, you could probably count on one hand the number of children born with this disease. And we've actually gotten involved with the National Tay-Sachs Organization and allied rare diseases. And it's incredible, even when you have these unbelievably pervasive and life-changing neurological disorders that people run into, even if it's the rarest, less than a dozen in the world, there's a community that comes together. So that community, though, brings that energy of people understanding each other. And, it's that idea of all boats raise the ocean, right? So bring it together, and that can be a beautiful, impactful thing, even if you're an entrepreneur who's just building a business. I think that's all framing that's vital to think about.
And, I certainly hear the energy around all of that. Um, when you are looking for a community, what are some things that you use to evaluate who might be a good community for you to participate in, and that's going to be uplifting to the energy and empower you, rather than, something that might lead to an energy drain?
I love the
I
idea
call
of
them my energy
I
vampires that are
I
out there,
love I love that. Yes, yeah. There's the energy vampires, right? Who pull you down with the drabness and the how that works. Those are the people that, I mean, on the flip side of that, also there's a realm of toxic optimism, right? So think
Mhm.
about when you blindly go into that positive path, it's the same way that it works for people to drain your energy and pull you in a different direction. I think part of it really comes down to, Lois, though, how, if you, in terms of working with communities, when you have people who deeply understand themselves and are in a community for reasons that are working up in the world, then that's a different flavor than someone who's just stepping into, make $20 million and self promote themselves. That's a different feeling of the community. So that's kind of a roundabout way to say trust your gut. That's the biggest thing that we should all trust ourselves with is our gut feeling. My career started in a 20-year nonlinear corporate marketing background. And I remember even in my early days as a leader where I was hiring teams of people, I knew in the first 5 minutes of a job interview when someone stepped in if they were going to be the right hire for the team or not. And it wasn't about, you know, talk about a fun thing to think about with as an entrepreneur in an entrepreneurial mindset. So much of what makes up the humans that we interact with in the world can't be encapsulated on a resume. So those junior or mid-level employees would walk into an interview, and I could tell based on just that feeling of how they stepped in and reflected there that they were going to be the right hire or the not the right hire. And there are technical things that you can learn. Obviously, if you're someone who's an engineer or a scientist, there needs to be more of that technical understanding. But generally speaking in the world, it's about the moldability and that openness to learning that was so critical. And that's essential in terms of community as well. There's also an aspect of communities can be established and they can grow. I mean, 9 times out of 10, or even 10 times out of 10, what that initial idea was is not exactly what it's going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years in the future. You iterate and you learn, and as an entrepreneur, that's an essential piece to keep in mind as well. I mean, think about just generally in terms of entrepreneurship. So many people in the world have ideas that are in the back of their mind. It's not just about taking action. A lot of people don't act on those ideas. It's about having that resilience that keeps you moving on that path. And if whatever that is you're creating sits in the center of what drives you, that path ultimately has to lead up on an upward trajectory. I truly believe in that. I love to use a tool in my coaching practice that's called Ikigai, which is the Japanese concept for reason for being. And it ties together what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. And I truly believe that as an entrepreneur, even when facing chronic health conditions, if you work towards the center of what's in that Ikigai, that's a path upward in the world. Even if it feels stagnant, plateaued for a while, keep marching in that direction, and that eventually leads to success.
And there's a couple things I want to pull apart from what you were just talking about. One certainly relates to alignment, both, in terms of, where you work and in terms of the kind of work that you would do. If you're talking with someone and coaching them and you are trying to figure out where they're going, what direction they want to head next. What do you think are some key factors to hone in on to help them understand, what's my next best course? How does this align with why I want to do business and why I want to be an entrepreneur?
Uh, it's challenging for some people to crack that nut, right? It's layers of the onion that open that up. I position my coaching practice that we start in that realm of visioning work early, but when we in that first month do the visioning work which includes Ikigai, I also will mention I like to pair it with what's called an Odyssey plan. that looks 5 to 10 years in the future and then lays out either your path you're on stays consistent, you build an alternative, or you think about no constraints and no limitations. And I like to tie those two exercises together in that initial visioning stage because they allow they don't allow they make us work towards introspection. Looking inward is so critical to do that work. And if you don't spend that time, it's also not something that should take you 5 minutes to complete, right? You need to start it. I recommend writing it down and then walking away from it and spending maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks iterating and looking in the right times at the right place inward to use those tools more effectively. When I mentioned the Odyssey plan just a second ago, I love that framework as well to think about because it takes what I love to call big, hairy, audacious goals, those BHAGs that sit in front of us. And it's not a direct roadmap to follow, but it builds that wider vision for where do I see myself going? What can I do? And I like the way typically with that Odyssey plan, it doesn't end up being option A, option B, or option C. It's some amalgamation of those three that lead us on that visioning work. But again, those are things that you start to do. You have to give it time. Also, as we work into month 2, month 3, month 4, those can iterate over time. They can change flavors. You can get to a different level of understanding and use them even more effectively. We're humans, we're changing all the time, right? So
And some of this comes down to self-awareness, and self-awareness comes much more naturally to some people than others, because one, they may have learned to practice it more, and two, I believe somewhat has to do with our personality nature. And so for folks that are less in touch with that element of themselves, do you have any particular practices or techniques that you like to recommend for people just to kind of start thinking about what is going to align with them the best?
I mean, it's a matter of, from a coaching perspective that I love. I love those challenging coaching clients more than I do the easy ones who just pick it up and run with it. But it's about I I also love in having conversations, and this ties back to community. I love to start by understanding someone's origin story. Even in the realm of the Resilient Entrepreneur Summit and chronic health conditions, you have an origin story that has delivered you to where you are today. And I think about this. It's so important to open that, right? Because that starts to take the onion and peel back layers and not force those. You're not taking a chopping knife to it. You're very gently peeling off each layer. And when you start to do that work to understand what someone's origin is, and that can go all the way back to their childhood and what they grew up in. What are their relationships like that they've had throughout their life? Where, not only where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What was your family life like? That origin is so important because it starts to open up that thinking towards what really drives you. Think back, for instance, to when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. What was that vision of who you wanted to be? Although, so many of us wanted to, fly to the moon and, go up into space or become a professional athlete or, be a musician touring through the world. Ultimately, the majority of us don't end up in that place that we envisioned, but there are threads of that have driven us on our path towards where we are today and where we can go in the future. And, going back to a little bit of that is great. The other piece of it that I like to mention, especially when people who it takes a little bit longer to get this work done and get it out of them, I am a big believer in the idea of grace. And grace completely stripped from a religious perspective, to be 100% transparent is something that we need to give each other more of, but also give ourselves more of. And when I coach people and I, assign them the Ikigai or the Odyssey plan, it's not about me getting that work back from them. It's about them delivering that work for themselves. And that's where that grace comes into play. If they're struggling to figure it out, I say that's okay. Step away from it for a little bit, breathe. I also am just a big believer in the fact that when we have these big things, especially as an entrepreneur, we're trying to do, we want to laser focus on the 3 million things that are happening that are going to allow us to succeed there. There's value in space and time to step away and refresh. And giving yourself that grace to say, okay, I step away from this. The brain works in very weird ways. It ultimately becomes easier when you give things a little bit more space, I believe.
And some of what I'm kind of reading in or hearing here is that in that self discovery process, we as entrepreneurs all know that we have limiting beliefs that have come from somewhere. We may be conscious of them, we may not be conscious of what they are at all. And how do you see that coming into play as you are trying to, rediscover some passion around your business or trying to get a new business set up and figure out what direction I want to go?
I mean, it's a really a critical. We all face that, right? That self-judgment. There's been so much over the years that's been written recently, about imposter syndrome, which is limiting. It's that growth mindset is so essential, and if you don't have, you can open up that growth mindset. I also, one of the other tools that I love to use in my coaching practice, it's a platform called Positive Intelligence. And I actually think this is really relevant to anyone who especially is facing a chronic health condition. This is an idea that we all have these self-saboteurs, right? And they come from a primal human brain that operates from a flight or fight mentality. And in the modern world that we live in now, because we have this technology and we have these modern systems, when we lean too heavily into those saboteurs, they can lead us on a downward cycle. The biggest one we all have, and to tie back to your question, is the judge. And that's the judge of self, the judge of others, and the judge of situations. And when you use this positive intelligence platform, it works at an operating system level. It's 15 minutes a day of app-led guidance to remap neural pathways in your brain and enable a sage way of thinking. And a sage way looks up in the world. But, that's all part of an entrepreneur mindset that I think we all need to have, no matter if we are the fully optimized human or if we're dealing with a chronic health condition that doesn't, allow us from a stereotypical level to work at 100%, but we can work at 100% of who we are at an individual level.
And I know, I personally have struggled, and I imagine many of our audiences has also, really trying to understand what that 100% looks like. Because, there's days where 100% is me just getting up and doing some basic work. And there's days where 100% is like, I'm full steam forward, I'm energized, I have complete mind focus, and I accomplish a lot. So, how do you try to even figure that out?
I mean, it's about finding those energy. We all have those energy boost times and those energy drain times. It's no matter, I'm someone who I've realized over, decades of working now and building two businesses with my energy coaching practice, and I'd love to say we could solve this with mystical stones and sorcery. But it takes that work and it takes that assistance and that accountability to work around those different pieces. It's really about though understanding where are those energy peaks and valleys within your day. I know that if I have two young daughters, I have two dogs in the house, I live in a state of controlled chaos all the time. I've realized over the past couple years that right now my sweet spot of getting focus work done is not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and working till 7 because I'm going to wake the dogs up and they're going to think it's time for breakfast 3 hours before it's time. It's that block of 9 o'clock to midnight at night. And that's when I know for me, all of the distractions start to slip away and I can sit there and use that time effectively. But, whether it's taking a list of every task you have in front of you and putting it on a sheet and then assigning an energy level that it requires and then thinking about, for example, can I automate it? Can I delegate it? Can I even eliminate it? That's an exercise that starts to tie towards understanding what are those tasks that you have in front of you that drain your energy and how do you think about pushing them to someone else and using resources. I think one of the things that especially as early stage entrepreneurs, no matter what our background is and where we come from, we hate to ask for help. And help is something that's so essential to have on your entrepreneurial journey. And it goes back to what I mentioned about intentionality within community. But when you have those supportive people around you and you ask for help, I mean, number one, the worst answer you're going to get is no, generally speaking. And I actually love when I get an answer that's a no or a no but, which then is a point to take feedback and understand I'm not failing. I can iterate based on that feedback. Uh, that that's okay. Ask for help, get those resources in there. I love the idea, and I bring this to my coaching clients of bringing together a board of advisors. And these are not people who are, it's not a therapist, it's not a mentor, it's not a coach. This board of advisors are people who maybe they're friends you grew up with, people you went to college with, people you worked with in your first job who know you a little bit deeper than just someone you met on the street. And you use them as a tool and check in with them every quarter and say, here's what I've achieved in my business, here's where I'm thinking of going next. And they can be your vision aligned gut check for making strategic decisions that you're marching in the right decision. And they're those people who will challenge you, but challenge you just so that you can get better. And a great thing I think you and I, Lois, both know when you're an entrepreneur and you're building a business, you need to think about your annual reporting that you have to go back to if you have a larger business. We need to go back and evaluate every year what we did and where we're going next. And that board of advisors is a great checkpoint system to bring your board of advisors in at the flip of the calendar year or whenever you started working with a board of advisors and send them that annual report, and then they can help guide you in a very collaborative, supportive way to where you might want to go in the future.
And I think it's really important when you are, especially earlier in business, of looking at kind of those quarterly points, because things may be developing and changing more quickly at that point. And say, okay, like, how did I do this last quarter? Did I achieve what I'm looking to achieve? If I didn't, what was there that stopped me? What's holding me back? How can I work through that? Because there's so many new things that you are discovering as an entrepreneur. We're always growing and learning as new things come our way. And we sometimes get so caught up in the day to day that we don't take the time to reflect. And so, how do you work with leaders that you work with to build in that reflection time?
You want to know the simplest tool? Go to your local pharmacy and pick up a 99-cent notebook. This is a tiny little notebook. It's thin, and this is what you record your small wins in. Think about Even if we were the most well-bodied people in the world, think about Michelangelo, the famous Italian sculptor. And I love to coach people with that mindset of imagine you're Michelangelo and you get a 3-ton block of marble dropped in front of you. The small wins, capturing the small wins, are the hundreds of thousands of chisel marks you need to make to turn that block of marble into a beautiful statue. That doesn't happen overnight. It's the same idea of you have to build, you build a home laying one brick on top of another brick on top of another brick. You don't unless you're talking about 3D printed houses, which that's a different realm to think about. With houses, you structurally build with those small wins. And if you have that tiny little notebook that fits in your back pocket or the front, slot of your backpack, wherever is good for you, when you any small win, any win, whether it's small or large, write it down in that notebook. And then when you have that dark day, when either something doesn't work right in the business or you just don't have the motivation, your energy isn't there for whatever reason might be there, you can refer back to those small wins to give you a little bit of that boost back to say, hey, I'm going to give myself grace that today wasn't what I hoped it would be, but you know, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to try again. And that's okay. One day of not doing something is something we can forgive ourselves for. 2 days of not doing something, that's when you need to start to think a little bit harder about why you haven't done it for 2 days. But that small wins notebook can allow you, in a very cheap, accessible way, get that boost back in terms of confidence.
Yeah, I love that. Just a simple way to remind yourself of things that you are accomplishing, because that's so important to look at the positive side and gain some energy spark from that. And I also like the fact that you said if you start to see a pattern there of, I'm like, okay, there's been several times here where I've fallen short of where I wanted to be, or I'm not seeing the results. That brings us to an accountability factor. And I know you talk about that a lot. How do you help people build in kind of that self accountability, even during times where they've got fluctuating ups and downs in energy levels?
It's about taking that space again to sit back and reflect. It's all about, giving yourself that reflection and walking away from it. One of the things that I refer back to a lot with the people that I coach on an ongoing basis, there's a fantastic chart that comes from the Gartner hype curve. And it's the emotional cost of being a founder and an entrepreneur. So you think about those ups and downs that you go through, but think about in photography when you talk about aperture, right? And you look at today or this week, that's a laser focused amount of time, and that could be down. But if you back up and widen the aperture to a longer time scale, that's only one tiny blip and something that you've built over time. And I apologize for making hand motions that replicate the mountain behind me, of course. But that's that understanding that things take time is really critical. You
Yeah,
can't.
that's an entrepreneur's journey. There's ups and downs and plateaus all along the way, and that's to be expected.
Right. And there's also, I talk a lot about what I love. It's called the growth paradox. Growth is slow, slow, slow before it eventually becomes faster than ever. And the difference is keeping resilient and staying on that path. And so many people, going back to something I mentioned earlier, never take the action with the idea they have in their brain. Then they don't stay resilient. The sort of fourth level to that, though, is so many people give up on something right before you get to that faster than ever or that more successful than ever. Tough it out. Tough tough it out. I in my corporate career was laid off twice. That's an opportunity to go and fall into that allure of darkness that brings you into a downward cycle. Based on the way that I operate, which has truly always in my life been with these tools of optimism and autonomy, use that as uh, the motivation to take those challenges and just grow. It goes back to that positive mindset, positive psychology, that positive intelligence platform. That's something that I discovered as I was early in launching my coaching practice, but it's a philosophy that's been within inside myself since even I was a young kid. It's always been about that self-determination and that self-efficacy. And if you can unlock those pieces within inside of ourselves, that helps in that regard to build that resilience. And I like to say, even if you get laid off or you get diagnosed, you're recently diagnosed with a chronic health condition, that sun still comes up the next day. There's a gift within inside of that challenge that if we start to embrace and believe in that, that opens up doors that might never have, number one, been doors that we saw before, but number two, that bring us to a different place of success. I a few years ago, for instance, was in a business accelerator program with Morning Brew, the daily email newsletter, and one of the cohort mates that I met there, someone who has just a digital marketing background, marketing leadership and strategy, he since was a kid had a degenerative eye disorder that eventually was going to lead him to get blind or to go blind. What he ended up, his name is Nick Mendler, what he ended up actually building is a platform called I Spy that for people who have degenerative eye diseases that are either in the early stages or later stages of affecting, brings together this community and support network that never existed before to help people who either have emerging blindness or blindness have that support system from a holistic and encompass nature of community building and being able to leverage resources there. It's just another example, though, I have in my own sort of set of experiences of someone who's got this big challenge that they're facing, and they know it's going to happen eventually, but they're trying to make a change in the world, knowing they're not alone, that's going to help other people out. And there's so much when you start to work on that, that goes back to that center of who you are that keeps you resilient, motivated, and going in the right direction towards a better future.
And as we're talking about resilience, and staying the course, how do you help people when they're at that kind of critical point of looking at, is this the right path to keep putting energy into this where I'm not seeing the success that I'm expecting to see for myself now? Or is it a time that I really should be thinking about pivoting? I don't
I,
ask easy questions.
I, so I'm in the early stages of launching a podcast right now that I'm calling Founders Failures, right? And that's something that we don't talk much about in the world, that anyone, any business owner started to build a business and eventually, they failed. There are huge people who've made impactful businesses and you hear about the successes, but there are failures that ended up delivering them on that path to either iterating or reinventing that opened up doors to success. It's okay. It's okay. If you take I, for instance, really believe, and with my coaching clients, I talk about this, even if you go through being laid off in a corporate role or your first business completely, completely fails, unless you just, curl into a ball and atrophy and die, you learned things that came through that experience. And it's all about that mindset of those challenges did have gifts within them if you know the right places to look. And if you take accountability to those things you've learned, that pivots then to inspire where you go in the future. But really, what I'm saying, Lois, is everyone has faced those failures. It's all about how you take the learnings that come out of the failure and pick up the pieces to do something new, different, better in the future.
I like that. Um, One of the things that may bring up for some people is guilt around, you know, maybe having run something into the ground that they didn't plan on running into the ground because they either didn't have the skills or the knowledge to know how to resuscitate it, or it may be around their productivity because they are saying, I should have accomplished more, but yet I didn't. So for somebody that may tend to go into that sense of feeling guilty, what are some ways to deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a therapist, right? Of course, that's one piece of it. I love, yeah, I think that there's this idea of a fully optimized human, right? Where a therapist is helping us to resolve things that happened in the past. You've got a mentor who sits on a day-to-day basis, keeping you energized and accountable. And then a coach, of course, is working towards the future and that future self. But, you know, I went to Catholic school through fifth grade. I'm well familiar with Catholic guilt, right? And how that comes into play, whether that's, not eating the lunch that my mom made for me when I was in school and feeling guilty about not doing that. That guilt is a hard thing to wrap our heads around and to self navigate but it goes back to that judge that I mentioned before. That's the judge of self. And if you know, based on your accomplice saboteurs, which is another part of that positive intelligence platform that I love to dig into with clients, you if you understand those accomplice saboteurs, when you start to understand the why behind why you feel that way, it opens up the opportunity to go, oh, that's just, yeah, that's me being silly. That's not founded and grounded in a place of trying to iterate to become bigger, better, more successful. That's that's going on that negative downward cycle. But I think obviously you go back and you fail and you understand what are the things you learned from that experience. For instance, I love to think about in my corporate career. I had every kind of leader from the best leader in the world to the worst managers around. And it's amazing to think about the perspective of even when you have a bad manager in front of you, you, with the right mindset of learning and understanding, can take learnings from that bad experience. And then when you step into a leadership role, you know the way you're not going to lead teams, the way you're not going to manage people. um, but that's kind of a way to get to that sort of understanding that even those challenges give us an opportunity to learn and grow from.
And, a lot of what we've been talking about is relates to kind of the mindset that you bring to everything. And I know, it's not something people enjoy talking about all that much. It's kind of like, oh, we're going to talk about mindset today. And people go, but tell me what role, if you had to even rate it on a percentage, do you think mindset plays into kind of the success of an entrepreneur?
I mean, mindset it's not 100% of everything. It's definitely at least 80, if not 90% or a little bit more. It's all about mindset. But it's not just about having a positive mindset all the time because that's impossible. It's knowing that it's okay to have a negative mindset. I mean, there was a day last week. I, dropped my two kids at the bus, where I live outside of Boston. We have a beautiful 160-year-old cemetery that's just down the hill behind us that I love to walk around with our two dogs. it was one of those mornings when I was like, my coaching business is not succeeding. I set something up that's not working right. My sales calls aren't coming together properly. Should I just pack this up and walk away from it? And it was a temporary, 15-minute blip on a cold, winter day.
Mhm.
And I knew I needed, for whatever reason, in the way my brain works, to go through that. And then I came back and I picked it up, and the rest of the day was much better. It was saying, I don't know what's driving this, but it's okay. I'm going to be all right, and it's all going to work out. And I feel lucky, Lois. I'm a white male in the world, right? Maybe a little bit of that mindset plays into that position and that perspective. But for decades, I have wished I could bottle that confidence and that perspective up and hand it to people who don't have that same position in the world. But I'm just mentioning that because I even deal with from my position and whatever struggles I've dealt with and the advantages I have in the world. I still deal with that as well. We're all humans.
And we all have bad days. And it really comes down to what kind of techniques do we learn and practice to help us get through those times to become more resilient in
Right,
how we do our business.
right, exactly.
Um, just kind of in wrapping up here, what kind of advice would you like to share with entrepreneurs who have those ups and down days and such, that you think would be helpful to them in their journey?
I'm number one, just know whether it's writing it on a post-it note that sits on your computer or you put it in front of you, you're not alone. You're never truly alone. It can be a very lonely experience building as an entrepreneur early in the stages, being not having anyone you can rely upon. Find It's okay. And also find your tribe. Find those people who can help support you and lift you up, whether it's that board of advisors or it's just stumbling across that niche, unique community that aligns with people from your background or whatever you're looking to build that can help support you and elevate you. Whether it's going on LinkedIn and finding the people doing the same work, or there are so many communities built on platforms like Slack and other messaging platforms out there. Find your tribe. Find those people that, number one, you feel comfortable with, but are marching in the same direction and can help support you. So it's a combination of
And I
work.
would just chime in there, if you are really struggling to find your tribe, then create your tribe. Of starting to invite other people, say, hey, would you like to join me in this?
Right, exactly. Raise your hand a little bit. Know that your value and your experiences are what what drive you. I think to sort of wrap that up a little bit though, I in my book Make Your Own Glass Half Full got permission to put one image in it, and it's so critical. It's something I've had up on the wall behind my computer here for years. It comes from a platform on the web called Wait But Why. Tim Urban is the creator, and it's this visualization of life paths. And today is right in the middle. The past has, a bunch of black lines that are secured, and then a green line that you followed. And then the future is all of these green lines going in different winding directions. So think about today is just those first building blocks for where you go in the future, and it's okay. That grace, that self-grace, that lack of judgment for yourself, give yourself an okay on that, and then you're going to succeed. You'll get there.
Great. I appreciate that. Do you have a bonus, Adam, that you wanted to offer our audience? Because we'll put the button right below the recording here. And can you kind of explain just real briefly what that is for them?
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm definitely happy to open up access to what I call an Energy Boost Blueprint. And this Energy Boost Blueprint is a really tangible worksheet-based tool that anyone can use, and I'd invite everyone to check it out and give it a try to start to dig into what we covered around those energy boosts and those energy dips and how you can navigate use of them from an entrepreneurial mindset in a productive, beneficial way to not necessarily, I'm not here to say I'm going to fix your energy, right? It's about understanding your own energy and how you can architect that path that works for the way your energy operates. I call myself an energy coach. I'm not going to, I'll help you plug in and power up, but I'm not the one who powers that battery ultimately. It's all about that battery and that energy that's inside yourself. And that energy boost blueprint is a pretty quick, easy to use roadmap that gets into a little bit of the philosophy through my coaching practice as well and how I enable that within my clients.
Good, thank you. I think that'll be really helpful for people.
Awesome, Lois.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and, providing all the excellent information and tips that you did for people.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. It was a huge pleasure being here. And I can't wait to see what some of the other summit speakers bring to the forefront because it's a fantastic platform and it's all about influencing that positive shift in the world. So thank you for assembling the Resilient Entrepreneur Summit, Lois.
Great. Let's all go have a productive day.
And if we don't have a productive day today, that's okay. Tomorrow will be your productive day. Pick it up
Very
and
good.
again. It's
Very
okay.
good. Okay, we'll cut the video here. Thanks, Adam, so much. I really appreciated
Yeah, it
the
was
chat
fun,
that
Lois.
we had.
I'm sorry I didn't bring anything from a presentation standpoint, but I think that
Oh,
was a
no, no. I mean, we
oh,
had talked about the possibility, but we didn't firm up exactly what it might be. So, as I said, I had plenty of questions, and I was just kind of trying to go with the flow and intermingle some of those in with responding to what you were saying.
perfect. Awesome.
Good.
All
Well,
right.
if you can get over the link to us to your opt-in page, we're sending out a reminder email. Probably come out today along with the promo information and such, so that we'll be able to put that on the speakers page with the interview and everything to
Yep.
lead them to your opt-in.
I can definitely do that. It's easy to send over. It's just a simple link, and if that works for you, Lois, then we're
Yep.
all set.
That's all we
Awesome.
need is kind of like the link to take them to your opt-in form.
Cool. Awesome. I will email that your way.
Okay.
And
Sounds
if you
good.
obviously promote this when I start to see that stuff coming across, and I can't wait to see what the impact is. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
I'm really
the
excited about all of it. It's like, unfortunately, lots of last minute details that I'm taking care of. I had a couple speakers who dropped out because of various reasons, so I'm scrambling to find a couple more speakers now in case you know anybody. Um,
Okay. Oh, let me think about that actually. Huh. Okay. I'll take that. But that's
yeah,
the
if you
nature.
happen to think of anybody, just shoot me a way to get in contact with them, and I'll reach out. And I am putting the word out now, so you know. But it's all coming together, and I'm excited by the interviews I've taped so far, and I've got more to do in the next couple weeks.
Awesome. You've got it, Lois. If you need a little shot in the arm, I'm here for you also in that
Thanks.
regard. But
Really
let me
appreciate it.
let
And
me let me loop in a couple people. I might just throw them on I might copy them on an email. I've got a couple people front of mind that I think maybe could step in and help. So
okay,
stay tuned for that.
very good. Thank you,
Awesome.
Adam.
All right, Lois. Happy
Have a
Monday.
good one.
Make it a
Bye.
great week.